in terms of a country's capacity towards responsible AI development. Next slide, please. And from the 2024 edition, we covered about 138 different countries, and also had over like 160 experts across the world. And we had about 13 partner organizations that helped us with coordinating, the collection of data and helping us curate all that and having some sense of country participation that was going on from our various researchers. And what we'll be doing in today's session is to talk more about the country researchers and the roles that you'll be playing, potentially playing in helping us gather that data and getting to see how impactful your work is going to be in shaping how governments plan subsequently or government legislates around AI and also promoting responsible AI. Next slide, please. Part of the objectives of GRI is to measure the evolution of government's commitment and progress in the implementation of responsible AI principles and practice. And some of the specific things that we do is to establish, we're hoping to establish systematized human right-based benchmarks for responsible AI. We want to be able to track that over time, longitudinally. We also want to assess a country's conditions to support and promote responsible AI, as well as provide evidence that would support decision makers around the globe in their effort to promoting responsible AI. And also, lastly, to realize principles through implementation, evaluation, and accountability. If you go through our report, you will see some more about what accountability is, our measurement of some of the country's commitment and where each country or even subcontinent rank. And our work has been very impactful. And so, for those of us who are here today because you would like to be a part of that project as a country researcher, you get to see how impactful this work is in shaping global debates around AI or responsible AI, to be precise. And part of our impact is we've had over 8,000 downloads of the first edition of the report. It's been cited, by regional and national bodies and help in shaping national and regional strategies for AI. The data has been utilized in the UNESCO RAM report, as well as it's received 2 global awards, one from the Paris Peace Forum and the other from the UNESCO International Center for Artificial Intelligence as a top 100 projects on AI currently ongoing. There are over 60 plus engagements in multilateral and regional events on AI governance that this work has played a key part in. Next slide, please. And what I'll do now is to just talk about some key findings before I hand over to the next, my colleague. Yeah, next, please. What we try to do is to measure across a couple of dimensions and of thematic areas and multiple indicators. At the moment, now, we are still working on improving and making this edition, the 2026 edition, a lot more robust. And part of what we cover here is on responsible AI capacities, governments, human rights, and AI, as well as responsible AI governance. And we do this by looking at certain key thematic areas. So some of the thematic areas include like gender equality, data protection and privacy, public participation and awareness, bias and unfair discrimination. We also look at things like public procurement, transparency, explainability, access to remedy and redress, safety. We also look at some foundational laws that sets the stage, or foundational key elements that set the stage for promoting responsible AI, like international cooperation and the like. Next slide, please. Another key finding that we found during and you would find this if you look at the report from 2024, AI governance does not necessarily translate into responsible AI, right? 39% of the countries which we researched or surveyed although they had national strategies, they still scored low in terms of addressing like other areas of responsible AI, which we consider very critical to responsible AI. Next slide, please. Also, if you look at the report, you would find that some countries had frameworks, some without frameworks, and in this case, about 35% of the countries with framework still rank pretty low in terms of access to remedy and redress, and 43 of them in terms of impact assessment, and 24 of them in terms of public procurement. So there's still the number of countries that are without framework is significantly higher than the countries with framework. Like 103 countries do not even have frameworks that address things like access to remedy and redress. And 95% of the countries have no sort of legislation around impact assessments of AI. We know that legislations around AI have continued to evolve, and it is our hope that soon enough, much of the countries that ranked low in the previous edition would now hopefully rank a lot higher. Next slide, please. Other key things we looked at also include inclusion, equity, and you'd see this. We covered things like labor protection rights, gender, cultural and linguistic diversity, and we looked at these across three broad scopes. So the role of non-state actors, and by non-state actors here, I mean academics and not-for-profit organization or in the NGO space or civil society space. Then we also looked at government actions, and then we looked at government frameworks. So government actions could include things like government's commitment in maybe in terms of its investments and all that in pushing for responsible AI. And we looked at government frameworks, things that include the government's, let's say, legislations, policies, and the like that. And you could see from this that just very few countries had really significant government involvement in terms of government frameworks, but a lot more had more involvement from non-state actors, so from academia, and from civil society groups. I think I'll just run through the next so can we jump down to two more slides, please? Okay, so a quick one here. Out of the three government frameworks addressing the rights to work and labor protection, only seven were enforceable. Next slide, please. Um, and then there's a major gap that we also noticed in ensuring safety, security, and reliability of AI systems. Only 25% of the countries that had frameworks ensure that there was some level of technical integrity of AI systems. And I'm sure that by the time we're doing the next edition, which we'll be doing soon, we'll be getting to see more governments focus on honing on this particular issue of technical safety and security. Next slide, please. And I think that should be the last one. Okay. Um, so we also looked at the role of universities. Remember, I mentioned academia and civil society groups and the crucial role they play in responsible AI. They fill the gap in the places where governments have been unable to, adequately create policies or legislation or enabling environments. In this case, about 500 plus universities and academic institutions, which we covered the impact of what they did, as well as 400 civil society organizations and 350 private actors. Last slide, please. Um, Yep. There's also, I mean, this goes without saying, and lots of us were into the conversation around responsible AI. I know that there's been some sort of gender gap in there. What we are beginning to see and what the data showed us here as well. Um, some of the lack of commitment around promoting some sort of gender equality. And that's one of the things we measure. And there's 37 governments, including six in Africa, led initiatives promoting gender equality in the context of AI systems. This is still not enough. And hopefully we want to see more change. And with the index like this, we're able to help shape government's commitment. And I'd hand over to my colleague, Ayantola, to walk us through what the role of the country researcher would look like. Angela, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Sam. Can everyone hear me well? Okay, cool. So I'll just quickly kind of run through some of the basic expectations, I would say, and also requirements that we are looking for in our country researchers. Next slide, Melanie. Okay, so basically, I mean, we consider our country researchers as sort of independent experts with deep knowledge of AI governance in their countries of interest, right? So, as a lot of you who have probably applied would have seen, you were asked to indicate a country of interest. So, this is usually a country you're currently working in, or you've worked in the past, or you have, just very deep knowledge of the AI governance landscape. Um, our researchers are key contributors to GRI's global evidence base. They help shape international conversations on responsible AI. So you're not just collecting data or just doing research, but you also have a good opportunity in your hands to sort of use that experience or that data collection process to contribute to AI governance for your countries of interest, right? Um, Importantly, you serve as sort of points, touch points of regional touch points across the areas you're working on for your countries. Next slide, Melanie. So what are the key responsibilities? Well, so first of all, we would be having a mandatory virtual training in September. So I imagine, as Sam was talking, a lot of you would, it could be quite overwhelming to kind of follow through all of the things you'd be working on. So just to say, don't worry, we will have a training session in September to kind of, go through all these things in more detail. Um, so most importantly, the process involves kind of conducting country level desk research. In some cases, it might involve, speaking to stakeholders on the ground and just kind of, finding people to exchange ideas and validate some of your initial insights from the desk-based research with. And to do that, you would have to complete a structured survey, which we would, kind of distribute during the recruitment process. And we'll also give you a handbook that sort of, explains all these things and the process of filling out the questionnaires. One of the key things we expect from our researchers is that you ensure the highest, quality of standards in terms of, the information that you supply in the questionnaire. We all know this is, the age of AI, and sometimes it could, just get easy to mix up information. So we would really be hoping that our researchers will work with the highest level of integrity and quality. At the end of the data collection process, we would expect the researchers to write a small summary of the information collected and some context which may not have been captured by the questionnaires they filled out. Next slide, please. So you will work, I mean, it's kind of slight difference from what we had in the last edition, but everything sort of remains very similar largely. So you would work across 5 dimensions. You collect data across 5 dimensions. So the first one is sort of, inclusion and diversity dimension. I think Sam already touched on some of these in the things like gender rights, children rights, AI regulations on rights of persons with disabilities. You would also collect data on, ethics and sustainability issues like environmental impact, transparency and explainability mechanisms. Also on labor and skills, issues of labor protection, AI literacy frameworks across the country you're working on. Um, Trust and safety is also one critical part of the global index. So, you would be collecting evidence related to things like data protection, access to remedy and redress, and so on. The final one, which is sort of a new dimension that we are introducing for this next edition, is what we call government use of AI. And so here we're aiming to see how governments are practically committed, and this is still a work in progress, just to say, committed to public sector skills development and how AI systems are being used. Next slide, please. Next slide, Melanie. Okay, so while we're waiting for the next slide, I just wanted to say what I had on the next slide basically is so here it's just a kind of simplified flow chart of what you would expect the whole thing to be like. So the entire process of, working as a researcher on the global index would run from September to December 2025. In September, we would have a mandatory training, which we expect every selected researcher to attend. And over the next 3 months, you would dedicate about 60 to 80 hours just kind of working on these different dimensions. As you can see, I just sort of made a simplified flowchart of what this could look like. So, say for example, in October, we'd expect you to work on, say, two of the dimensions and the several different indicators that fall under them. And this sort of runs on until December. Next slide, please. I don't know if it's just me, but Melanie, the slides are not moving on screen. Can you?
Ayantola.
Yeah.
It is moving from my end, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, everyone's saying they're not moving actually.
It's
The
not
last
moving.
slide I had
Okay.
was
So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to reshare.
okay. Thank you very much.
It says Melanie George has paused sharing.
Yeah, she's gonna share again. Just to say, just use this opportunity to say, in the interest of time, you can start posting your questions in the chat. We might not be able to, get everyone to speak via the microphone just to save time. But if you have any questions in the meantime, start popping them up in chat, and I'm sure my colleagues will deal with them. Okay, thanks, Melanie. I think yes, that's correct. So. Yes, I'm just right here. Yeah. So basically, this is sort of a simplified flowchart of what you would be doing over the course of the 3 months of this data collection. You've got 60 to 80 hours of research sort of spread out across these different months. Next slide, please. Okay, so who are we looking for? I mean, the ideal candidate is someone with a very strong background in AI governance and policy or related fields. Could be in other emerging technologies. But I think the most important thing is kind of a demonstration of research and analytical skills, which is sort of grounded in curiosity and meticulousness, because it could get a bit it's easy to get things mixed up with an avalanche of information out there. We want people who are very familiar with local context. This is something that's very important. We do recognize that having a global index that tends to cross compare or measure things across a range of countries with vastly different, social, cultural, and economic landscape is a very difficult thing to do. So we want people who, can bring in this sort of, deep local understanding in their judgment of the data collection. Importantly, we hope that our researchers are all fluent in English because the global index is being published in English, but obviously we would also appreciate knowledge of other local languages. Um, Reliable internet and availability is this cannot be overemphasized as this sort of involves a lot of desk-based online research. Next slide, Melanie. Okay, so what's the time commitment like? Like I said, it's gonna be spread over 60 to 80 hours in the 3 months of working on the index. We will have one virtual session in September 2025. This is very mandatory. We will communicate this in the selection during the selection stage. We expect the compensation to kind of range between this amount which strongly depends on the scope of work and sort of country context. So we recognize that there might be a bit of variation in this. Next slide, Melanie. Okay, so what are the benefits for you? I mean, quite a lot. I could tell you as someone who's sort of worked on a pilot of the data collection, sort of testing internally for this. I gained a lot of knowledge on AI governance myself, which is sort of really improved I guess my breadth of some of the issues out there. So that's one thing I can assure you of you would get from working on Jira. But you would also be part of a global network of researchers who are dedicated to ensuring inclusive and ethical AI policies. So we've had people in the past who have used this opportunity of working with Jira to sort of communicate their own research or get opportunities to speak about global responsible AI governance through the work they've done with Jira. And this is the point I'm making about visibility and access to innovative research and policy recommendations. Um, Next slide, Melanie. So as I assume most people who are here have probably already applied, but if you have not, I think you still have about a week or so to send in your application. So there's a Google form where you could just, kind of submit your application. I'm sure my colleagues would pop the link in the chat. And basically, what you need on that form would be a CV, list of your publications, and a couple of small essays to write just to kind of assess your understanding of, AI governance and the work we do with Jire. And we hope to communicate final selections by September 8, 2025. So I think, yeah, that's it for me. Over to you, Nico.
Okay, thank you very much, Tola. Hello, everyone. Okay, after this review that Samuel has done regarding the kind of insight that we expect to get from this research project, and also the description that Ayantola has shared about the requirements of the country researchers, which is the positions that we are looking for people, we would like to do a brief comment about the data collection process. This is one of the key aspects of this project, to manage data collection in more than 140 countries. So we need a clear process and review the quality of the work that is submitted. And we wanted to talk to you briefly about this, how it works. So we have this global research network, which is composed by 140 country researchers, which are the people responsible of collecting and assessing the information at the country level. From those country researchers, we're going to pick up approximately 25 of them that are going to act as sub-regional team leaders. These are people that's going to be coordinating and overseeing the work of other country researchers on top of their countries of interest. This is something that we are going to be deciding later on who is going to be these people, but they are the first layer of review and to check the quality of the data submitted by the country researcher. So every questionnaire that country researchers submit is first reviewed by sub-regional team leaders. If there is something wrong, if there is something that needs to be better explained, if there is something that needs to be better justified, the questionnaire goes back to the country researcher, okay? And then have to fix everything. And when it's fixed, it goes back again to sub-regional team leaders. And these people will only approve the questionnaires if everything is clear, everything is correct. And then we have a second layer of review, which we call the global team of reviewers. It's approximately 8 people, global experts on responsible AI, who are going to double check all the answers submitted in the questionnaires throughout the process. And after that other layer of review, we will also have what we call a thematic assessment. So we are going to have dashboards and statistical analysis to identify outliers, to identify trends that might require us to give another review to the answers submitted. So the work of the country researchers is considered complete once the questionnaires have approved all the steps of data quality. And obviously, to ensure that country researchers submit high quality information, we provide them with different processes and tools to do so. We, as Tola was mentioning, we have the training sessions. We also have the research handbook. And also we will have spaces where country researchers can ask questions. They can have exchange of ideas, or if they have any doubt on how to assess some piece of evidence, they will have a space to have this kind of conversations, so they are sure when they submit a questionnaire. We will also have an interactive versions of the researcher handbook, and it's good to note that the researcher's handbook not only includes a general guidance on how to understand the overall methodology, on how to understand and how to read the questionnaire, but for each of the thematic areas that we are measuring, country researchers will receive a two-pager brief where we clearly identify the kind of evidence that we are looking for each of the thematic areas. We provide examples of what kind of evidence is accepted. We provide also examples of what kind of evidence is not accepted sometimes. And also it's important to note that we are going to provide also all the evidence collected in the first edition of the Global Index on Responsible AI. So country researchers of this edition can work on top of them, and they don't have to start from scratch. So they have all the collection of evidence of the first edition to reassess and to decide if it's still valid or not, and in which thematic areas it could be used. So yes, that was an overall description, very high level of the data collection process, but it's important that you know that we have different layers of review and data quality, and everything needs to be approved before the work is considered done. Next slide, please, Melanie. Great. And okay, now that we have gave this overall overview of the project, this is a time where we invite you to ask questions, write them in the chat so we can address them in this conversation.
Thank you, Nico. I see we've got a lot of questions, and some of them my colleagues have been responding to them. And so I think we'll just jump right in. Please type your question in. We'll only have enough time to read the questions. I'm not sure we can have everyone on mute and then respond. Okay. So one of the questions someone asked was if they could still apply for the role, if it's still open. I think I'll hand that over to you, to Tola, if you could speak more about it. Is the application process still ongoing, or is it closed now?
Yes, so the application is still ongoing. So this is closing next Thursday, I guess, so 31st of July.
So we've got another question here. Is this role open to early career researchers?
Yes, open to everybody. I can also use this opportunity to address the issue of publications. It's just kind of prima facie evidence that you have research skills. It's not the only qualification. So we're open to all types of researchers at any stage in their career.
Okay. And someone was asking about when to expect, to know if the application was successful or not. Nico, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, during the month of August, we'll be making those decisions and communicating to them.
Okay, great. And someone asked if we're open to volunteers for this. I believe there's an answer to that in the chat. You can write to us if you'd like to volunteer as part of this project. You can write to us via email, and we'll get back to you. There's a question here about, someone's asking about the application form. I think you should check. Can we have that posted, Tola, please? The application form, the link to it.
Yeah, it's been posted in chat actually a few times, but I'll post it now again.
Great. Okay, so I wish to know which other countries are focused in Southern Africa. Nico, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, we don't have the list here. I will share you very briefly, but we have covered 41 African countries in the first edition, and we are aiming to augment a little bit, so almost all the countries of the continent. We will share the list soon.
So yeah, so to your question, I think it's Lesatis. Yeah, we are covering much of Southern Africa, if probably all of it. And last edition, we did about 138 countries and territories, and we're hoping that this time around we do even more countries and cover more. There's a question here: is there an interview or additional process for selection apart from the Google Forms? Nico, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, it depends on the case, but yes, we expect to have next steps, and one of them is an interview process before the country researchers can join the network.
And so there's also a question here, Nico, I'd like you to speak to. I know Tola touched on it briefly. Someone was asking if authorship of work has any impact, for contributors or country researchers. Do they have to have authored journal articles or something before they could be country researchers?
Yes, as Tola was mentioning, this is nice to have to prove the experience in researching on responsible AI with some publications. However, it's not mandatory for some countries where might not be researchers with that requirements. We could explore other options, but there could also be other options to show experience in working on the field that are not publications. So yeah, so different career paths are allowed in this application.
Oh, great. So there's a question here from Emmanuel, is asking if the recorded session will be available later. Unfortunately, no, Emmanuel, we're not making this publicly available. This is just the information session. And then we're hoping that, it would give you a sense of what to expect in being a part of the project. Unfortunately, we'll not be making the videos. But however, we'll be having a blog post where all those questions you've asked would form part of our FAQ, and we're going to have like written responses to all of these questions. And so we would also post that on our LinkedIn, our social media handles. So if you follow us at the Global Center on Responsible AI, you'd have access to responses to this question. There's a question here, Nico, I'd like to ask you. It's from Emir. He's asking, or she's asking, why Bosnia and Herzegovina are not included in this project. Do we have an answer to that?
This is a very good question, and perhaps this is not the session to discuss it, but we had collected evidence for the country in the first edition. And, in this exercise, we assess country level frameworks and actions, etc. Even though our methodology can capture some nuances for federal countries, that we are also we take that into consideration when designing the methodology. In the case of Bosnia and Herzegovina, it has a very particular political and administrative system and division. And after some conversations with the country researcher, we came to the conclusion that our methodology was not being fair with that country, which has a very particular administrative and political organization. So we did not include it in the scoring of this edition, of the first edition. However, we are exploring some ways in that we can make fit that organization into our methodology. So yes, we expect to be able to address that problem.
Oh, thank you for that. Tola, this question is for you. Someone is asking if it's ethical to offer remuneration for this study. So my guess is the person understands this to be that they are participants in the study. So they're asking if it's ethical for remuneration for a study like this.
Oh, no, no, are you referring to yourself or you're referring to people that you might be contacting to get information? Because so ideally we are only paying researchers, like a particular person working on a particular country. So yeah, that's ethical to do, I believe, because we're paying you for your work.
Okay. And there's a question about how many candidates are going to be selected per country.
One.
Yeah, I think that question appeared a couple of times. How many researchers per country? Okay. Whoa, I think I've just seen that question probably about 5 times now. Okay, so can we, a question here, can we apply or work on being in 2 or 3 country level researchers? I'm not sure the question came out very clearly here.
Yeah, I think I got what the person's saying. So I was just trying to answer in chat. So yeah, if you've gone through the application form, we had like primary country of interest, which is where we expect for the most part for people to get selected to work in. In some cases, we probably don't have strong applications for particular countries, and we want to be able to consider people who chose it as a second, country of interest, or perhaps we have people with very strong applications, and then we believe they might be, a fit for another country that we really don't have any applicant from. So that's sort of the idea, right? But ideally it's just one person, one country of interest.
Someone's asking, what is the likelihood of a candidate conducting country research in a foreign country? So I guess my question is, or the question is, if a person who's not a native of a country can actually conduct research in that in another country? Nico?
Yes, what it's required is to have strong knowledge of the responsible ecosystem of the country that is going to be researched and to know the local language. Okay, if you have those two conditions and you can prove them, it's okay. You don't have to be born or be a citizen of that country.
Great. The same person is asking another, I think it's Gimar, is asking if it says Amharic is my official local language here in Ethiopia, but it's not listed in the application form. Will this impact my application? Tola, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah. No, so like I said, the global index is conducted in English, and so we would expect researchers to have a good working command of the English language. It's a good advantage if you really fluent in your local language, in this case Amharic. It might be helpful to be able to talk to, I don't know, like, local stakeholders if you're stuck in your data collection process, but ideally the research is going to be carried out in English.
Great. Nico, the question here is, it says, are we going to work as individual contractors or freelancers? I don't know if there's a distinction there, but can you respond to that?
I don't know the distinction between them, but yes, it's going to be a one-time contract for a couple of months until the end of data collection.
Great. So what type of confidentiality agreement or do researchers need to sign? Nico, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, this is a good question. And we sign a contract with each of the country researchers. Regarding the confidentiality, what we ask is not to publish summaries or the responses to the questionnaire until we publish all the information. One thing that it's also good to know is that all the information that we collect is then published as open data. So if you go now to the methodology page of the Global Index on Responsible AI, you can download all the evidence and all the answers of the first edition. So we will also do the same with the next edition. So in terms of confidentiality, we ask not to publish anything until we publish. Once we publish all the information, yes, you can use that data, but referencing the Global Index on Responsible AI project and the Global Center on AI Governance.
Thank you. So I'll just quickly answer a couple of these questions because they've come up a few times. Will this meeting, which is recorded, be shared? The answer is no. We are going to be producing a blog post with all the frequently asked questions that you've asked here, and would respond to that. The other question that has come again is how many researchers per country? Is going to be one researcher per country. There's a question here saying if I've already applied and I was invited for this meeting, do I still need to fill out the form?
Sorry,
Tola.
no, you don't need to do that. This is just an information session.
Okay. So you don't have to do that if you've done that before. Another question here: are there open positions for senior researchers or expert members of international assessment and international bodies? Nico?
Not specifically now. Currently the open positions are for the country-level researchers. However, we are open to receive CVs and contact from people interested in other positions that we might open in the future, but not currently.
Okay, now commentary. There's a question if Albania is a part of this study. Nico, do you want to shed more light on that?
Yes, it was in the first edition and it will be in the second edition.
Okay. So what if one apply in a country he or she resides and can't speak the local language but intend to employ research assistants? Is this allowed? Tola, do you want to respond to that one?
Well, I'm not sure I'm best placed to respond to this. Maybe
Nico.
It is not the ideal situation. However, it could be discussed, but it's not ideal. But yes, please apply, complete the form, and explain that, and we can see later.
Well, it is highly unlikely that you will face a situation where you potentially need to have a local researcher who is versed in the local language, because a lot of the documents you'll be collecting and reviewing will be written in the official language of that country, right? So the primary researcher needs to be versed in the official language of that particular country. I highly doubt that there'll be situations where applicable evidence would be written in another language than the official language.
There's a question here about said any type of connection or networks that organizations of government would the researcher require all this while they are carrying out their work to make their work more efficient? Do they have to like consult with like specific organizations um, and all that?
So I'm sure Nico would answer this better, but just something came to mind now. So one of the caveats I think on the application form is that you cannot apply to this if you are a current government employee or contractor or consultant or whatever. Because the idea is we want to ensure neutrality and sort of objectivity in the data collection. So I'm not sure if that answers it partly. Maybe Nico could answer the other bit, but just to say, uh, we would not be considering applications from government employees or contractors of of the particular country.
Cool. Do you want to add to that?
Yes, I would like to add to the first one you asked regarding the relationship with organizations, etc. Yes, as Tola was saying, not contractual relationship with governments, but yes, we expect that country researchers knows the responsible ecosystem, know which are the organizations working on the field, and also, yes, if they have connections with government, to ask something or to schedule interviews with some people from government that might be able to point them to some valid evidence. It's a good value to the researcher.
Good. Tala, based on what you said, someone is asking, how about if I work at a government-owned university?
No, yeah, that's certainly a different case. I suppose perhaps I didn't frame it well. A lot of public universities are funded by government, right? So we consider you to be an academic in that case.
Okay, Nico, there's a question here. Someone's asking, can we apply as a partner? I guess this
No,
partner institution or
yeah,
something.
no, but they can send us an email and we can have a conversation on that. But it's not a process that we have opened. But please
Okay,
send some email to introduce your organization.
great. There's a very interesting question here. You always hear this when you do interviews. The question is, how do you measure success, or what does success look like for a country researcher?
Yeah, the success of a country researcher is submitting all valid evidence with high quality justifications, and also avoiding what we call the false negative. This is stating that there is no evidence in some indicator when in fact there is evidence. So that's what we call success. And after this data collection exercise, we perform some analysis of the performance of the country researchers based in some peer review process. But the success is to submit the most accurate landscape of responsible AI ecosystem via the questionnaires.
Hmm. I know there's this question has come up a couple of times. Someone is asking here that since we have been invited for this meeting, does that mean that we need to fill out the form again? The answer is no. You don't have to fill out the form. I think that's Mohammed Goma. No, you don't have to fill out the form again if you filled it before. Um, so again, what is the expected result if of the collaboration? Um, Tola, do you want to respond to that? What's the expected result from the country researcher in this case?
Well, so ideally, like Nico said, it would be obviously compiling evidence through the questionnaires we would send to you, and we want that evidence to be of high quality. Don't worry, it's kind of I know we didn't get the opportunity to actually go into detail about what the actual questionnaires or surveys would look like, but it's well structured and pretty clear. So you would be given a handbook that shows you the process of how to collect data for each indicator, and it's a quite slightly automated process, and you would just be filling out those questionnaires based on the evidence.
Great. I see that we've got about 5 minutes more, so I'm going to quickly ensure we cover as much questions as possible. Someone is asking here, it says, I rushed to make my application. Can I withdraw it and reapply?
Oh, that's a very interesting one. Yeah, please do reapply. We do not hope that many people would do this because it just compounds the number of applications that we want to review. But yeah, if there's a significant difference, we are open to reviewing your second entry. This is not ideal, but we could make a couple of exceptions.
Okay. There's a question here around reconfiguring the frameworks to be suitable for developing countries. Nico, I know we do something specifically to ensure that the global majority is represented in our survey and fairly appraised or assessed. Could you speak a little bit about this?
Yes, the measurement framework has been thought and designed taking into account the different realities of the different countries. So even though there is one single questionnaire, it's designed to capture these different realities and to capture the global South realities, and not collecting only evidence of what we say strong and robust in place frameworks, etc. But yes, initial steps taken towards responsibility. So it's like a scale of responsibility that we are measuring, and it doesn't have to be a very solid and strong one to be captured by our methodology.
Okay, thank you. There's a question here that is asking if we have standard questionnaires following the thematic areas. Yes, when you get selected and you're going through the training, research training, you're going to get access to the questionnaires. We're going to show you how it works, how to conduct it. We've done pilots of these, and you're going to be taught around how to get quality data, how to write the justification and all that. We'll walk through that with you. Then we've got, I think we probably can take one or two more questions before I hand over. It says, what mechanisms are in place to validate the evidence collected by country researchers, especially where government transparency is limited? Nico?
This is a very good question. We have described the process to validate the evidence with the different layers of review of the sub-regional team leaders and the central team of reviewers and the thematic analysis. And all the evidence submitted needs to be public. So if there is no public evidence, we can say that there is no evidence. However, we encouraged country researchers to use all the mechanisms available to get to that information, like interviews, etc. Yes, but we set this process with the sub-regional team leaders that they know the context of the region to assess if the questionnaires are accurate.
Thank you. One last question before we go. I think I would respond to this. Is Moyan, they asked it a couple of times, kind of volunteer or one apply without published work. Yes, you do not have to have a published research work. But it's best if you do, but you don't have to. It's not like mandatory, but it'll be good. Tola, do you want to respond to that also?
No, thanks. You've sort of clarified. I just wanted to respond to something else before we close. So on the language requirements, like I see this is kind of coming up in different ways. Ideally, for most countries, your AI governance document would be in your local language. So this might be Portuguese, Spanish, or whatever it is, right? So part of the instructions in the handbook is because we are publishing this, the index in English, you would have to do the work of, translating some of the evidence into the English language, right? In terms of how you kind of fill out the questionnaire. It's pretty straightforward. You're not expected to translate the entire document, but just the kind of bits that speak to it in that language would have to be expressed in English. So this is why we say like researchers must have a working command of English. Just thought to flag that.
So thank you very much, Tola and Nicole. This has been very informative, and for those of us whose questions have not yet been answered, do not worry. We're going to be doing an FAQ, as I mentioned, and we're going to be sharing this on our social media channels so you can follow. And then we're going to respond to all the questions, any of the questions that you think where you've not gotten response to, you could find an answer there. At this moment, I'll hand over to Rachel.
Hi, everybody, and thank you so much. Sam, Nico, Tola, I think it's very, very exciting to see so many people from so many different countries interested in this project. Certainly, many of the researchers who are involved in this project last time were contacted by their governments to give briefings to their governments and are considered through doing this process, part of the kind of key experts within any given country. So I think it is a really exciting project, not only for advancing your own career and expertise in country or solidifying the expertise you already have, but engaging with this global network of researchers from around the world. So thank you all so much for your interest. Thank you, Sam, Nico, and Tola for managing all the questions, and Melanie for setting this up. And look forward to engaging with many of you soon. Take care. Thank you. Goodbye.